What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. Man, me and Cory are sitting here jamming, and I'm so ready for this episode. I'm so excited. You know what, Grant, man, have you been watching Coach Prime at all, Deion Sanders?
I've been hearing about it. I've not watched it.
No? Okay, man. You know, I've always been a fan of Deion Sanders, but I have to say I was kind of hating on him at the beginning of the season, and my son was like, Colorado is where it's at. And I was like, all right, we'll see. You know, just kind of the way he came in was like, I bring in Louis and stuff like that. I'm like, man, he's doing, but this guy is amazing. First off, I love Deion. I love the way he's coaching, the principles, how he's teaching these men to become men, really. But I was thinking about him a lot because he has this thing. He's like, play me my theme music. Like every single time he's like, play me my theme music. My son was like, man, I've watched so many videos of Deion saying, play me my theme music. And I sit and watch him every single time, you know, and it's like, it plays his music. And I'm like, man, this is what we got. Like, I can't do this episode until he play me my theme music.
Yeah. Grant, hit my music. and then we go.
Grant, play me my theme music.
You gotta ask me like that from now on, though. That's the deal.
Like, so I figured I'd do this preface, you know, we'll kick it off. Like, Grant, play me my theme music. And then we'll like kick it off, you know, from now on. So
I love it, man.
Got to get you into that headspace.
Got to get you in the headspace. That's exactly it. We tried. We did an episode after doing the intro every time, and I'm like, where do I start? It's like, you know, it's like the tapping and I've lost the word for it, but there's a whole
the rhythm.
Yeah. I lost the name for it. It doesn't matter. Anyways, y'all, we have a killer episode today. I'm super excited. I met Cory Lewber, surprise, surprise, at the Entrepreneur Unplugged event back at the beginning of June. And first off, you see Cory looks like a kick-ass person. So I walked up to him, and sure enough, he is a kick-ass person. And we were just like jamming about coaching. And then there was another conversation. We were talking to another coach, and we were just kind of jamming, saying the same things. I was having a lot of fun, just like kind of collaboration back and forth. And so I was like, you got to be on. And then here we are several months later. Cory's finally in the studio, and he's coming fresh from a coaching seminar. So he's got the energy and the passion, and he's rubbing it off on me. So he's going to give to all of you too. So Cory, welcome to the studio.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Oh man, I've been looking forward to this conversation.
So have I.
And we haven't had any other conversation since then other than following each other on social media.
A little bit on social media, a little bit of back and forth. You were pumping one of your YouTube. He was a client of yours, right? You coached him, or
Which
were
one?
you just mentoring him? The young man who was trying to get to 1,000 followers.
Oh yeah, Cory. Yeah, or not Casey. Yeah, Casey's
Casey.
one of my clients, and man, such a killer story.
It is a killer story because you told that story at the Unplugged event, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so that was the one I was thinking about. Yeah, we've just had a little bit of back and forth banter on social media, supporting one another, plugging each other. I'm happy to be here.
Well, and I love your content. And for listeners that have been loyal listeners, you go back, if you think about the Dr. Rhonda the community cultivator episode, we talked a lot about Cory because I love, like, you do such good content, and you have no hesitation jumping on those videos. And we were just talking a little bit about how, you know, everybody has like their little thing. Like, I didn't really enjoy, I'll make them. It's not like a fear thing, but I didn't really enjoy that piece. I love this piece, diving in and like having that conversation back and forth. But how do you know, what is that? What you said, your response was awesome. You're like, I love doing that.
I do love doing that. I have no qualms about getting on camera or getting on a microphone and talking and educating, because it's what I think. Might not always be right, but it's what I think. So someone out there wants to hear those words, because I know that I have learned things from people that wanted to just put their opinion out there, and it resonated with me. But on the inverse of that, when I said that there's things that some people don't like to do, mine was, I don't like to put thoughts on paper and try to make a Canvas slide or try to make a Word document that's going to be a PDF on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Because I feel, and this is just a thought, right, that when you put it on paper and you start articulating it, now you're teaching, right? And your words are going to have a lot more weight than if you're just being yourself on camera and just speaking. I think that we have a lot more leeway for the words that are spoken when you can see the person individually rather than when they put it on paper. And again, just an opinion, but that's the thought that I always had. So I was like, I don't mind jumping on camera, but man, I do not want to write it down because that's a lot harder for me.
I'm not very good at scripting out, and I said for this, I don't have any pre-planned questions.
No,
We're
you
just gonna
don't.
roll
You're
into
flying.
it, just flying with it. Who knows what's gonna happen? But so, dang, I had a really good question. Oh, that's what it was. You talked about like being on that video. As you're doing that and people kind of getting to know you, what do you see as a result of that? Like when by putting yourself out there, you're you, that's really your authenticness. What do you see happens when you do that?
People appreciate your vulnerability. I've shared my backstory, and that was one of the reasons I was telling you when we were doing our pre-chat. My coach was all about helping people tell their stories as a way of empowerment, right? To connect with people who are going to want to work with you or just want to listen to you and learn from you. And I just felt I avoided telling my story for 20 years because shame, judgment, all the things that come with it. And at some point I was like, I'm 40 years old and this has been holding me back for 20 years. And I got to show up at some time. I got to show up at some time in my life. So for me, telling that story was like getting the weight off of my shoulders. And I think I did that in my second podcast, which does not exist anymore. Got a little bit of blowback. They're like, oh, you just deleted everything? I said, yeah, because I'm rebranding. That was a great trial run. It was a really good way to learn the in and outs of podcasting and, solo podcasting. Wow. I whole new respect for people that just get on and riff for an hour or a half hour and, teach and entertain.
Yeah.
And I think I got away from your question, but
No.
that was the vulnerability for me. Is I think people appreciated the vulnerability, and that, anyone who knew me knew I was scared,
Yeah.
but I did it anyways. But that's the entrepreneur's journey, right? And even if you're not doing something to make money, but you're just putting yourself out there, that's more than just walking down the street and going to your favorite restaurant or your grocery store that you always go to, or the school where you drop your kids off at. Like getting out there in an area that's uncomfortable for you. People appreciate vulnerability because I think we all have a little bit of it.
What's so cool about this, and this is the space I see working through coaching, I'm sure you see it quite a bit too, is that's the biggest thing that holds us back, is that vulnerability and that fear of being judged or people looking down on us, and that shame. Shame is such a key. But then when you actually go and do it, people respect you more.
Mm-hmm.
It holds us back because we're afraid to put ourselves out there. But then that same person would respect somebody that went out there like you and was like, wow, look at him.
Yeah. And I think that if people were really being honest with themselves, the people who are talking bad about someone else who's doing it or shaming them or looking down on them is probably coming from a place of envy because they see you doing it and they want to do it and they're not. So they're going to, throw shade on it.
Before we get back at it, a quick shout out for our sponsor, Playbook Builder, powered by AI. This show has always been about giving the resources and the tools to small business owners in order to grow and scale your businesses successfully. And so I'm so excited to partner with a company that does just that. If you've listened and heard any of our guests, you've heard talking about building process, developing and training, building culture, are all such important pieces in order to building a great company. Well, Playbook Builder, powered by AI, has come along and revolutionized the game on how you can do that for your team and people. Whether you're onboarding new people, training and developing, continued training and developing, you're looking to scale your business or eventually sell, or most importantly, you're looking to build a legacy as a visionary. Playbook Builder, powered by AI, is able to solve those problems for you. For me, as a consultant, I've been able to plug in, and it's so amazing for what I do for clients. I can now leave a legacy. And so, for example, I'm next week training a new hire for a company, and I've been able to build out the next month of her training program using Playbook Builder, powered by AI. The cool thing about the AI, what does that do? What's the hardest part of building out a process? Taking the step by step and making it easy to learn. What the AI piece does is you can actually type in what process it is, whether you want to onboard, if you want to onboard a new employee, type in onboard a new employee and what type of industry you're in, and the AI will put together a a foundation for you to build out your playbook. It is absolutely incredible. But don't take my word for it. Head on over to playbookbuilder.com, and these guys have set it up to where you can take this for a test run with no obligations. Plug in what kind of playbook you want to build. If it's a sales training playbook, for example, plug that in the description. And in the description, you can also put in what kind of industry you're in, and then hit generate, and it will generate a playbook for you. Impress from there, and you can take a 30-day free trial of the playbook system altogether. It's funny that when I was getting picked on as a kid, my mom used to tell me that. It didn't make me feel better. But it is true.
But you have to learn it.
But you have to learn it, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those lessons, so many lessons that people can tell you, and until you do it, you don't learn it.
Yep.
Right. And people are going to judge you anyways. You know, nobody that's being themselves is liked by everyone. And that's okay. I don't like everyone. Right.
And I love even what you said before we went on, is you're like, man, I got this great content and I'm starting to get some blowback. Good. That means that it's actually
challenging a norm. Like, what is a norm? Do you want me to tell you that? Am I going back to that piece?
Yeah.
So I am, for those who don't know, when I met Jason, I was a confidence coach. One of the things I struggled with for 20 years was self-confidence, how the world views me, therefore how I view myself. And that was holding me back. And I recently transitioned to being a homeschool coach. Now I call myself the homeschool guy. I'm not an expert on education, but I'm an expert on educating my children because I've been doing it for 4 years. And we can get into that if, you know, how that organically came.
Yeah.
Transition into homeschooling. And I said, well, you know, I like to do educational content on my social media, how to make homeschooling easier for someone who's doing it, how to help someone build confidence that wants to do it. And then I also sprinkle in a little bit of sarcasm and political humor in it. And one of my weekly, I put up one meme a week that I started making. And this one says, the reason I homeschool is because I've seen The Village and I don't want them raising my children. And the blowback I got was from a teacher, well, former teacher, 13 years, you know, in the teaching industry. I do think it's an industry. Yep. And she's like, wow, I take offense to this because I was a teacher and I cared for my students very deeply. And I was one of the rare teachers that when I would talk to a parent, and I would call every parent, she was a middle school teacher, of every student that was in my class in the first month of school, and say, if you have any questions or anything comes up, you call me because I am part of your village. And I said, you know, I don't want to say her name. I said, we had a really good dialogue back and forth. I said, you are part of the village. You were one of the good villagers. But the village goes from the classmates, the teachers that you worked with, the board of administration, all the way up to the top. And there's bad actors. There's, you know, people with intentions who are not good, people with intentions that don't line up with yours.
The fact that she said I was one of the rare ones. You know, right there in her dialogue was that I was the 10%.
Yeah, that she really did, now that I know her very well, went the extra mile. And I think that's very indicative of probably 95%, 98%. I mean, whatever high number you want to throw on it of teachers, right? We have a teacher in the family and she's like retired now, but she's like, I can't believe that you're doing this homeschool thing. And do you hate on teachers? I don't hate on teachers. I think teachers are phenomenal and they are necessary and they are needed. I have a problem with the bigger industry of the education system and making children pawns in a political game. And newsflash, that's not just a Democrat problem. That's a Republican problem. It goes to both sides of the aisle. Our children are not pawns in a political game. They are not there to be brainwashed for one side or the other, you know? So I'm going really deep down this rabbit hole now.
Yeah. So what was that, you know, when did you said 4 years, you've been doing it for 4 years. What was that kind of thing that pushed you into that decision? With
most people, it was COVID.
Yeah.
We were my wife and I were a little ahead of the curve on that. So I had some health problems in 2017. I was getting in the shower. I had a lump in my neck. I didn't see it. My wife saw it. She's like, what's going on with your neck? And long story short, we didn't think it was anything, but she's like, you need to go get that checked out. So I went to several ENTs. I went to a throat doctor, and everyone thought that this was an infection. That would have lined up. We bought a house that was built in 1840 in Clarkston, had a bat infestation, and I had been cleaning garbage cans full of bat poop out of this attic with no respirator or anything on. So they thought I had an infection in my lymph system. And they started treating it, and for a year, it didn't get better. So my general practitioner at I guess you would call it wasn't like a physical, but I went in to get something checked out, and he saw it, and he's like, you need to go see a specialist right away. Here's who you're going to go see. So he sent me to a Carmanos doctor that does head and neck, and he was like convinced it was cancer. But nothing, all the biopsies and everything, nothing came back cancer. It's something rare called Castleman's disease. It's like an autoimmune disease that's blended with like tumors. They can be very aggressive if it's spread throughout your body, and your body starts attacking it to shut it down, and unfortunately sometimes kills you with it. Mine was localized to my neck. So I had surgery, had lymph nodes removed in my neck, had some treatment just to, make sure everything was on the up and up. I get checked once a year now. But through that whole process, I said to my wife, we always had a dream of living in an RV and traveling. And then, life happens. You get different jobs, and then eventually you have kids. And
in the dream,
sorry, I keep
goes
banging
away.
that.
I bang it all the time.
Okay, so I said, if we'd both decided, I was like, if this doesn't kill me when they thought it was lymphoma, then we're going to sell everything. I'm tired of working on this house that we're trying to fix up that's becoming a money pit. And we're just going to go travel. Our kids are young enough. You're working remote. Let's go out and see the country and like build some memories together. So my son was in kindergarten in Clarkston, and then COVID happened. We had already sold our house. We already were living with my mother-in-law. We had a truck. We had the RV. Like, we were waiting for summer to hit, and we were going to do it just for the summer. COVID happened. The school year got shut down. And we said, well, we're doing it now. And in 5 days, like, we just like packed what we had into the RV. I already had the internet set up and ready to go, and like a special setup. And like, we left. So now he's going into his first grade year. My daughter at the time is 4. And so we're going to do some pre-K work with her. My wife is very successful in her job and was able to work remote. She was pre-remote before the pandemic, as now is like, you're going to be just designated full-time. You don't have to drive 2 hours to your office in Detroit every day now. So
you can truly be gone.
Yeah, can truly be gone. And so that's what we did. And I just had to get good at homeschooling real quick, so internet research, getting on blogs, getting in forums with people and trying to figure it out. We started out like most people did, like the online model. That didn't work because, what 6-year-old wants to sit and stare at a screen for 7 hours a day if it's not Minecraft?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly. You put a video game twist to it, maybe. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we did not do that the following year. We just decided like, we're going to do it ourselves. And that's how we got into the homeschooling journey.
Where do you start?
Where do
to
you
do it yourself?
start?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Let's go back to the community aspect. One of the pieces in the program I'm building is called Finding Your People, right? It's easy to do an internet search and get all the data about like, what is homeschooling? Do I want to unschool? Which is me. There's no curriculum. You involve your child in everything that you do, from building a list to go grocery shopping to handling the money. Like, they're included in everything, with the idea that they are going to absorb all the resources they need for learning organically. That's unschooling. Mm-hmm. Some people do the traditional method where they want to recreate a classroom in their home. And that really works for some people. It did not work for us. We like more of the hybrid co-op model. And this is what I tell my clients is find your people. Search co-ops and hybrid programs in your area and see what's out there. What homeschool groups are in your area? Does your local 4-H club? Because most towns have a 4-H club in their county. They will connect you with homeschool people and homeschool groups. Build your resource network and find your people first, then start searching the legalities in your state. We're lucky to live in a state that doesn't have any requirements for homeschooling. If you want to go to college and you are in high school, you have to keep records and transcripts of everything, meaning like what tests you're taking, what grades you have, what your extracurricular activities are. Your ACT, SAT scores, you have to, book all those yourselves, but that's how you go to college if you're in high school. But for anything else, like, you just go and do it. You let your school know we're going to be homeschooling, and you're out. That's it. There's a lot of freedom that comes with that. There's a lot of states that require you to have a certain level of education. Like, you might have to have a bachelor's degree, or you're not a felon. And you have to report once a quarter. And so like, I'm building out a 50 state worksheet right now. Just like, you can Google it and find it, but it's nice to have it in like a PDF form. Like, where do I live at? And what are the basic laws in my state? So when you ask, where do you start? I always tell people, find your people, do some Google reviews and Google searches, see who is in your area, talk to someone. man, I mean, homeschooling's booming right now too. So that's like the thing, like people are just deciding like the traditional education system is not working, and it's not even political for most people.
Yeah.
It's just like, this isn't working anymore. You know, people got used to being around their families more during the pandemic, and they have decided like, I can work remote. My kids can, especially in elementary, like 2 to 3 hours max of book work a day. And then I can include them in life and make memories. And, you know, if you are able to survive on a 1-income household, that's phenomenal. But there are people who work remote and homeschool their kids.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's where I would say to start. That was a long-winded answer. Find your people, know the legalities in your state, move on from there to just researching what are the different types of homeschooling. Are we going to unschool? Are we going to do a hybrid? Are we going to do a co-op? Am I just going to recreate school at home? You know, and then beyond that, there are curriculums all across the board. Are you a person of faith? Do you want a spiritual curriculum, or do you want, you know, something that's a little bit more secular? And I have a resource list that is almost done being built out, so people can like narrow down the pros and cons
to go,
in which path to go.
That's so cool. So I love what I've noticed, and probably intentional, is you posting homeschooling. You can be anywhere. You know, you guys
can be
like on the beach and, you know, doing these things like get the campfire going and like all these cool things show like you, and especially like pairing that up with being an entrepreneur. What's that like?
It's like being an entrepreneur. It's scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially when you make the leap, like what type of, if you're starting a business, like I have a passion for X, Y, and Z, which one I'm going to narrow it down to? Well, you're really not going to know until you go and do it. And more often than not, your first two aren't going to work out.
Yep.
Or you're not going to like them. And then you're going to pivot. And homeschooling is the same way. You're going to try different programs and they're not going to work. If you're lucky, the first one would work right away, but you want to narrow it down to 2 or 3 that you're going to try. Don't try everything at once. And then, you know, I focus on elementary age students because that's what age my children are.
Yeah.
And you said that you really can do it anywhere. And that is the most beautiful part about it. I follow a couple Instagram pages of families who road school, right? They work remote full time. So they travel around the world and will live 60 days in an area, in a country, or in a specific part of a country. And they immerse their kids in that culture when they're not working. And they educate them on like the basics, you know, reading, writing, and math. And then they go and learn cultures. And those kids are probably going to grow up to be very independent. They're going to be free thinkers, and free thinkers in a sense of like they can absorb information and decide what they think is right.
That's absolutely it.
Right. And they'll probably go on to be thought leaders or business owners.
It's killer. And again, that human experience, being able to live in different cultures, understanding different sections of people, just getting that real life experience, period, is huge.
Yeah. And to that point that I said that you're going to try a business and it might fail.
Yeah.
You know, that when I got into coaching last year and decided like I had a coach, I got the help I needed to turn some things around in my life. I want to do this. I always knew I wanted to help people. I had thought about going back to school and getting a degree to become a clinical therapist, but the thought of sitting 4 more years in a classroom just made me want to vomit.
Yeah.
So, okay, coaching for the better part of it is unregulated. I'm going to search out the best life coaching programs in the country, and I want to go get certified and learn a tool to help people. So I'm going to go and you know, my wife and I was like, she's like, what do you want to coach on then? Because she's a coach too, but she does more like technical career coaching for people going into the tech world because she's in tech. And I said, I want to be a confidence coach for people who are lacking confidence and how they build confidence and how they feel better about themselves. And for the better part of a year, that was going really well. And that's how you and I met, right? We were talking about that. But I always felt like it wasn't my leading identity, that that was like the undercurrent. But the thing on the surface was, what am I going to make unique and make my own? And then through the summer, I started, you know, talking again to my buddy Aaron from Storied Coaching. And what am I going to use from my past to help people? And I kept running into roadblocks. And I had thought about doing homeschooling and I was resisting it. And then one day he's like, why are you resisting this so much? And I said, because it's not cool and it's not sexy. Like, it's just, you know, I'm a man. I want to do something that's like cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Confidence coaching.
And he's like, why is it not cool that you're helping people take control of their lives and create individual freedom? And that really stuck with me. So I went media dark for about 30 days. I didn't do any posting. I did some self-reflection. I started working on notes. I'm like, what would this shift take? During that time, one of my clients who came to me for confidence coaching revealed that she had been a teacher for 13 years. And she moved into tech. She used my wife's program to get into the company that she was in. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I saw that you're a confidence coach, and I don't feel confident that I can homeschool my children, which is interesting.
That's interesting that led that into...
Because she, coming from...
And she's a teacher.
But she's a teacher.
Yeah.
Very successful teacher, very active in her community, very well respected, compassion and leadership and genuine love and care for her students. I can see it every time she talks about them. But she's like, the system is broken. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I don't want my kids in it. And I don't know how to balance work with homeschooling and how do I teach for 8 hours a day and work? I'm like, you teach 8 hours a day because you have a class of 25 to 30 students, and you have the kids in the middle, you have kids that are struggling, and then you have the kids that can probably skip a grade or two, right? They all require the same amount of attention for different reasons. You have 2 children.
Yeah.
They need you to be present.
Yeah.
They need you to care. They need you to love. They need you to teach. Everything else you can learn. And what was the turning point for her? And I am going to brag about myself for a little bit. I said, be the learner that you want your kids to be, because you can learn how to do it. That was the very long version about how we got here.
So what was it like with the confidence? Like, what led you to that? You said you struggled with confidence. Tell me more about that.
Oh, you're going to go there. Yeah.
Of course we're going to go there.
I struggle with confidence because of my background.
Yeah.
So for the people who know me very closely, like, I'm a convicted felon. And I spent, white collar crime in my very early 20s being a complete, can I swear on this podcast, being a complete asshole, very selfish, not caring about people around me, defrauding a company I was working for. And ironically, I wanted to be a cop at the time. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I had a weird, like most of us, like we all have something weird from childhood that sticks with us. I had some really weird, like emotional and mental and brainwashing from a deeply spiritual background. We'll just say that. And it stuck with me. And when I turned 18 and I moved out, I went crazy. And then I started living a lifestyle I couldn't afford. And then I got involved with people I shouldn't have been hanging out with. And I started cutting corners. So,
just one thing kind of led into
one
another.
thing led to another. And, I did spend time locked up. And I spent 5 years on probation. And one of the things that I always say, like, I'm very grateful for that opportunity. It was an opportunity because it straightened me out. Right.
Yep.
Like, it turned me around.
Yep.
But then when you have any, thing in your background, you're like, well, now I have to be more selective about what I'm going to do, and I was always passionate personally about cooking. And what is a 6'5" guy with a legal background, covered head to toe in tattoos, going to do? Well, he's going to go and cook. So I went to culinary school, graduated, started running a couple kitchens, restaurants, went back to school for pastry arts, ran some bakeries, was very successful at that, really enjoyed it, then got burnt out. And I wanted to have a family, met my wife, we were dating, and I was like, man, I just don't want to live this lifestyle
So
of
you're
like
working quite a bit.
Working a lot. If you're in a bakery or the pastry field, like you start, work at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, work till noon, 1 o'clock, which is great. But then you go to bed, you're cooked.
Yeah.
If you're in the restaurant industry, we all know how chefs, we know Anthony Bourdain, like it's true. Like they party hard, and it's because of the lifestyle that it's hot, it's sharp, it's dangerous. You work when everyone else is enjoying life. So I have mad respect for people who do that for a living. I didn't want to do it anymore. Then we had my son, and one of us, we just knew we needed to have someone home with our kids. My wife was climbing the corporate ladder, so to speak. She was having some success. So we decided that I was going to stay home, given my background and just, I'm a chef. I have a culinary degree. And so that stuck with me from about 30 to 39, 40 years old, where I was just like, I'm a great father. I love my family. But as a man, I want to work and I want to do something to contribute. And I always knew I want to help people, like, especially with my background. Like, I know what it's like to make mistakes and make not just mistakes, to make bad choices. And then I want to help them. So to go back to your earlier question about like showing up on social media, like I like being in front of the camera and I like talking. And once I told that story on social media for the first time, I was like, if I can tell this, I can do anything.
Anything.
I can do anything.
Yep.
Because I'm not worried about, because people knew that about me were already judging me.
Yep.
People who didn't know it were already judging me.
Yep.
That set me free. I think we all have something in us that will set us free. It's figuring out what's going to set me free to not be fearful of just doing the thing anymore.
I look at it like 8 Mile, the movie, where Eminem at the end, he's like, here, tell people something they don't know about me. He says everything that he knows they're going to say. And it's like, yep, that's it. That's true. All of it's true.
Yeah.
Say something.
Yeah.
Because you're so free.
And once you let it go, you're free now. It's like, I told you my biggest secret. This is the worst thing about me. So now you can't hurt me unless I let you hurt me. But that goes back to the confidence of like, well, I've already told you the worst thing. So that was the confidence piece of it. But I felt like there was a greater calling to serve people and to like educate and to teach and to help.
Well, to your point, it's figuring it out.
It is figuring it out.
I think, and this is a message to all the listeners, we talk about this quite a bit. So many people have great ideas. So, so many people are like, oh man, I thought of that invention a long time ago and somebody else went and did it, right? We all have great ideas, but then we're like, especially with a lot of people that I start working with, a lot of conversations I have, people want a sense of assuredness that it's going to work out. There is no assuredness whatsoever.
It's probably not going to work out if it's your first time.
Exactly. I had a client that told me, it's like, my biggest fear is I'm going to post something and nobody will reply. And I'm like, well, I'm going to burst your bubble right now. No one's going to reply.
But how awesome is that?
It's so
because
awesome.
then you're getting no feedback about doing the thing you were scared to do.
Yes.
And now you can do it again because you don't have to worry about if people are going to comment on it. I told someone that over the weekend. She's like, I'm making a shift in my niche. She was she's from Utah. She's an older woman who is a nutrition expert, and she's got a degree in gut health, and like she's an RN, and she's like, I want to help people with dietary restrictions and nutrition. And she's like, but I made a new Instagram. I don't have any followers yet. I don't want to post. And I'm like, this is the time to post. Post when no one is watching.
Yep.
Build the momentum. You'll get more comfortable, do it. So then when people start looking, it's like, you're already rolling. You're already doing it. The thing that will set you free is the thing that you were afraid to do. And the difference between the listener who hasn't done it and you and me is like, we were there once, we just decided to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did the videos by myself and they would take like 15 minutes, there'd be a 15-minute video that took me three hours to film and all that good stuff. And then, learning how to discern and cut which stuff wasn't good and all that kind of stuff. It was a learning process though. And I learned what I liked and what I didn't and what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do or what worked and what didn't, and you can just throw it away and build what you need to do.
Yeah. And for business, you and I are coaches. For coaching, like most coaches don't, like the first year, if you can make it through the first year, most coaches don't make it through the first year. They quit, right?
Yep.
Because it is very hard, not just it's one thing to get a coaching certification and they teach you whatever school you go to, right? They will teach you their tool for helping people, how to get in someone's mind and help them understand what they're thinking. And then how that affects their feelings and like how they act and the results, like all of that. You can learn that from anyone.
Yep.
But what you have to just learn on your own is how to run a business. How to run social media, how to create a slide, how to build a website, right? So if you don't have like the desire to push past things that are uncomfortable, whether you're in coaching or you're in business, like you aren't going to become the person that you want to be.
Absolutely. It's like if your core values are sleeping in, but you want to get up early and work out, you're going to constantly disappoint yourself, until you adjust your core values that I'm a person that gets up early.
This is true. Yeah. And I love sleeping in.
I love sleeping in.
I do. Get up.
I do. Yeah.
You got to get up. You just wait. That wasted productivity haunts me more than the comfort of sleep.
That's the thing. I woke up early a couple weeks ago and it was like a Sunday morning and I went to the gym and I came back home. My wife was like, oh, this is the one day you could sleep in and like stay in bed and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I woke up at 7. And if I sat here and didn't do anything, and then 2 hours later, I'm like, man, I could have went. I'm in my head like so much that I can't even enjoy that time. Like it's like I'd just rather go to the gym, get it out, and be home.
Right. You might enjoy it for those 2 hours that you're in it. For me personally, and then that 2 hour gap, that 90-minute gap, whatever the time frame is for you, wears off, and you're like, okay, now I have things to do. And you're like, I could already be done with this. I could have started and I could have been done.
Yes. It's ripping the Band-Aid off.
Oh, it is ripping the Band-Aid off. Great analogy.
It's doing the things you don't want to do first. And I love going to the gym, but at the same time, like there's been times in my life where I've like got out of that habit, and I always wonder, how did I stop doing that? But it's literally just carving that time out and knowing when you're going. For me, getting up and doing it, and it's like it's over.
Discipline and schedule, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you got to discipline and schedule, and it's on my schedule. I got to do it.
People who are like, I admire people who are disciplined, and I admire people who just do the things they say they're going to do. The only reason that they're different than you is they just make themselves do it. They are more comfortable making themselves do something that they don't really want to do.
Everybody's different. Some people just have that thing where they just go out and do, but most of the time it's like we all had that anxiety or fear that it wasn't going to work out, just going and doing it. And it probably didn't feel good the first time. We probably sucked at it.
How do you know when it's worked out?
How do you know when it worked out?
No, for real.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
You're on episode 127, you said?
Yeah.
You started at 59 before you moved into your studio, right?
Yep.
And if you would have asked yourself at episode 5, what is working out, your answer might have been where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And then the goalposts shift because you
definitely.
get more comfortable and you get better at doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that is a great question that you just like put into the ether for everyone to hear. Like, how do you know what working out means?
And hopefully it's growing and shifting as you go, because when I started this, working out looked like I'd get some clients out of it. Mm-hmm. People would know who I was a little bit more. I could, I didn't have to, for making video content. That's kind of even what I was getting after when I asked you, like, what do people notice when you're putting that content out there? When you put video content out there, people begin to know you without you having to introduce yourself.
Way different than creating a carousel slide, right?
Way different. And so I had a client once, and he was like, I get so many views when I post long form content. And then when I do a video like you tell me to do, I get like, you'll get like 1,200 views on the long form content. And then you get like 200 to 300 views on video. Mm-hmm. And he was like, why do I keep posting video if it's less views? And I'm like, because it's different. I knew somebody that posted long form content, and I knew her for 8 months. And then when I met her for the first time, it blew my mind. Her voice, she was Southern. She had a Southern accent. I never pictured her writing like that. I never pictured her. When people meet me, there's a certain point after creating so much content that I went out to a meeting. One time somebody invited me to a meeting or connected with me to talk about coaching, and they started talking about this story, and it reminded me of a story in my life. So I started telling them that story, and they're like, yeah, I know. That's why I called you. Heard that. That's why I connected with you.
Much harder to build the trust through a slide.
Yeah.
With something. I'm great we talked about this earlier. I don't remember if we were rolling or not yet, but like when you put something down and it's written, like you're educating. But when you're on video, whether it's a reel or a Zoom call or anything that's video, now people can get to know you, to your point, and that's how you start building the trust.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they know you, like you, trust you before they even meet you. Mm-hmm. And then, so you're out there, you have this content, and all of a sudden they see you in public. What happens? If you had this happen?
I have only had it happen at Starbucks one time, and it was in Clarkston, someone local. And it was Dr. Rhonda.
I was going to say, she mentioned
Dr. Rhonda. Now that I think about it, yeah. She was
like, you said, I know you. And you were like, I know you.
Yep. And she goes, you're much taller than I thought. I'm like, I get that all the time because video doesn't capture it.
I get that all the time.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't remember you being so tall until you walked in. I was like, damn, we're almost eye to eye. That's right. It was Dr. Rhonda. That was the only time that it has happened. I hope it happens a lot more because that means I'm affecting people's lives and that it's being seen more. What is crazy about making this I had so much drama about making this shift in who I'm going to help and who I'm going to teach, or what I'm going to teach and who I'm going to help. So I made the shift exactly 3 weeks ago, right? I had already had things that I was building out, but I formally made the shift and announced it to the world. And it took me 8 months to get to 1,000 followers on my Instagram. And it took me 3 weeks to get to 2,100.
Wow.
Oh, because the lesson there is when I was confidence coaching, it's good to make people feel good and try to inspire them, but you're speaking to everyone, which means you're speaking to no one.
No one. Yep.
When you get real focused in who you're serving and who you help, right? Now you're more dedicated and you're more narrowed into your messaging.
Yep.
And the people that you are meant to help are going to find you a lot faster.
People that were just having the conversation, what should we do about the kids this year? Should we go home? It was like homeschooling. You hear it quite a bit. All of a sudden now your video pops up and the answers are right there.
The answer is you just try it.
Yep.
There's no perfect solution. Pinterest, Instagram. I don't think I glorify or glamorize homeschooling on my post because I share my family. I share the things we're doing. I don't show my kids' faces. That's a different topic.
Yeah.
That's just an AI problem that is coming onto the scene. So, and it's weird. I'm like, they're kids. Like they didn't give me their consent. They're going to want to be on social media one day.
Yeah.
Are they going to want to show their face? I'm going to let them decide that, but I'm getting in the weeds there. You got to just get out there and try it. And like Pinterest is great for finding like schedules and, blogs and like how to like structure an English language lesson and make it fun and put a game into it, but there's also influencers and those people, make it look and seem a lot more glamorous and easier than it is because homeschooling is very difficult. It's equally, if not more rewarding.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that 1 hour of difficulty you might have in a day when you're having a really hard time balancing your schedule, then you have the whole afternoon free where you can go to a park, you can get lunch, you can go and explore a museum, you can go to the science center, and now you're creating memories, or you just go on a hike, right? You're like, wow, that hour was nothing, and now I get this whole day with my kids. And I believe that the generation we're raising are going to be better for it. Because, again, my buddy Aaron that I was telling you about, we talked about like the baby boomers, our parents, right? We're working so hard because it was like blue collar jobs or go to college.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of generational trauma in people's lives too, right? Our grandparents, my grandfathers were not in touch with like talking about your feelings, talking about how you, right? You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it was passed down to our parents.
Yep.
And I know it was passed down to me. And I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I was just like, I don't want to be the person my dad was. I know he meant well, but he didn't do it well. I want to do it better. So how am I going to do it better? For us, it was homeschooling. It was me being directly involved in my children's lives. And we need fathers more than ever to be involved.
I just read this book called A Season of Life, and it's incredible. It's the guy that the book is talking about. It's a real story, and he created this foundation called Raising Men for Others. And one of the things he taught, like the whole concept is that, like you talk about this generational thing, like what does it mean to be a man? And he'll ask people, like one of the first things he's intaking or bringing people in, he'll be like, here's a piece of paper, write down to me what it means to be a man. If you think about like generationally, if your dad or your grandpa talked about what it means to be a man, it'd be like going to work long hours, taking care of your family, being tough, not crying, like taking this on, and then we pass that down to our kids, what is this strength, this masculinity. It's not, not having those feelings. And then we get this definition. So then we're ashamed if we are different, if we cry, if we have if we're not necessarily the strong male. It's a whole shame around that.
You really got my wheels turning on that, because I think that those attributes that you just listed served us during Vietnam and World War II.
Yeah.
Because that was what the times needed. And I think that as a society and as a culture, we've changed. And so the demands of what families need from their fathers and their husbands have shifted too. And you see that a lot with like the whole toxic masculinity thing. Like, you can be masculine and still be empathetic and still be emotional and still be caring.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that you're physically strong, but learning how to be emotionally strong, mentally strong for your family, and then showing up and also being soft and compassionate is something I'm terrible at a lot. I have to work on it, because it's funny when you have children, you don't realize your parents were just people too until you have kids. Right?
Yeah, exactly. You thought they had all the answers, right?
Right. Like that superhero cape, right?
Yeah.
Like they can do no wrong and they have all the answers and like they have it figured out. And it's like, oh my God, they were just people too.
Doing the best they could with what they knew,
And so I talked earlier about that, like trauma, that we all carry some kind of trauma. It's like they were just people.
Yeah.
They were trying to figure their shit out too.
Yep.
And so am I. But I want to do it in a way that is nurturing for my family.
Well, it's huge. So I talk about this quite a bit. My dad, I had to do a lot of forgiveness because he was an abusive guy, and I blamed a lot of my results on my childhood and the way he was, and him being a dad. And it was like I had this realization that really he was just a guy doing the best he knew how. You know, he was really the victim. I'm not the victim, because he at 43 he committed suicide, you know, and whatever was going through his head at that point, he didn't believe there's anybody there that loved him or whatever, you know, all that stuff. And really, there's a lot that he threw away there, you know, in life, but it's like, he was just doing the best that he could. He didn't realize there was another way out.
When you had to settle into this path of forgiveness, when you had this realization, how old were you?
23, 24, 25, somewhere around there.
Still pretty young.
Yeah. 20. So he died when I was 23. So probably like 25, 26, somewhere around there.
So you were forced into an opportunity to try to figure it out earlier than most men.
Yeah.
I think figure it out. What shifted for you in your life after that?
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
Everything. My results. Like,
did you have children yet?
I did not.
Okay.
No. Which good. I mean, it probably would have helped me shift to, because having Jackson, I only have one son, but having Jackson would like sped up another major shift in my life. But just getting rid of that victim mentality and holding one person responsible for all or things, not just even that one person, but I'd held a lot of circumstances and other things that I couldn't control responsible for what was happening to me.
Yeah.
Once you shed that, it's the same thing as going out and telling your really vulnerable story, right? It's like, all that pressure and that weight is off. I can now go live. And if I know that my results are my results, you know, what's happening in my life is a result of what I'm doing with that, because shit can happen, you know, but how do I respond to that?
When you take accountability and you stop blaming it for other people, that's another form of like, what's the word that we've been using? Being vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're vulnerable with yourself.
Yep.
Right. Once you own it and you stop placing the blame on other people, like you do level up really quickly, right? Because then you start taking ownership for your actions.
Yep.
I didn't start doing that till I was 39. I struggled with it from my 30s.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm where I'm supposed to be now, but so much time wasted blaming my parents and blaming the decisions I made and blaming my upbringing. And just like, at what point, Cory, are you going to say like, you're in control? Do something about it. Yeah. Let it go. Like, you can't change it.
Yep. Yeah. What's so funny, we keep beating it up. We can change it right now.
Yeah. You can literally change it now. And you might need a little bit of help to do it.
Yeah.
You know, we all need help in something. That's why coaching is booming. We talked about this before we were rolling, right?
Yeah.
It was sexy to have a therapist probably 10 or 15 years ago. Now everyone's like going to therapy.
Yeah.
I went to therapy. Therapy worked for me until it didn't, because it was all like looking at the now and the past and how the past is affecting me now. But then I hit this wall after like 2 years, and this was like 37 or 38. I was like, I want to move forward. I'm ready to let go.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
So stop dwelling in the past now.
Yeah. And then how do I start like, not just like setting goals for the future, but then how do I like hold myself accountable? Because I'm terrible at holding myself accountable. So can you teach me? So then I had to go find a coach. You know, they're going to hold your hand. That's what coaching is, right? Whether you're in sports, you're in business, you're homeschooling, any of the coaching niches that are out there, is they are someone who's not only trained, hopefully, but they've done it and they're just ahead of you.
Yep.
And now they have the tools in their toolbox to show you, here's how you build the scaffolding. And now I'm going to help you start putting the walls up too.
This, for example, we talked about the podcasting and in starting it off by myself, right? I'm out there and I'm doing it and I'm figuring it out. But at some point it was great to be able to turn it off to somebody else. You know, like it's just, there's that wall, there's a learning to it. But then you got to pass it off.
Yeah. And you have to, that was that delegation conversation that we had earlier. Oh, I don't want to get help. I don't want to pay someone to do something that I'm doing myself right now. It's not going to make me money. It's not going to help me emotionally. It's not going to help my family. I mean, whatever it is. And then at some point you will look back and be like, if I would not have done that and delegated or got the help, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. I am reaping the rewards of getting the help, sacrificing time to, go to therapy, to get coaching, giving up a couple hours of work so I can homeschool my children, getting a business coach because I don't know how to run a business or build a podcast.
It just speeds up the time, because again, I could keep going down this route and I could keep knocking on the door and doing the content myself and getting better at it. And then I could hire somebody and grow it. But I found a studio that already had all the experience doing it. They'd already created a model that they could repeat. The owners had success doing his own podcast, you know, like, so they can speed up that progress so much quicker than trying to figure out how to continue doing it by myself.
I had a meme pop up in my head. That's why I smirked when you were
Yeah,
telling
yeah,
that
yeah.
story.
I love that stuff.
It was something about like the internet was the first coach.
Yeah.
Because it was, right, free information flowing around. Now you got to see how people, bad information too, but you got to see how everyone is doing it that has went before you and done it.
Well, and so that's what's really cool is because we do have great access to any resource we want. And when we talk about coaching, there's, you make videos, I make videos, we make all this content. Like somebody they don't have to go and get a coach. They could listen to the content. If you're great at DIY,
That's coaching.
Great. It is, but there's still a little bit different. There's a lot of personal development to that.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that people have is taking that action.
Right.
Or like, hey, that's great. I can follow some directions, but what if my situation's a little bit different and I have some questions on that? Like there's a DIY of watching videos. And if you can do it yourself, awesome. There's a lot of stuff I watched that I was like, I can go run with this and do it. But I think there's a whole sector of people that are like, great. I need a little bit more than just this video. I have some more questions. I need to dive deeper. I have a personalized situation. I have some questions. I want to, that's where really coaching kicks in,
Mm-hmm.
where you get somebody that is there with you that can answer and help you for your personalized situation versus watching.
Well, that's what social media is for, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing it right, it's not a vanity metric. It's nice to have followers, but a call to action. What are you struggling with? What questions do you have? Please reach out to me.
Yeah.
Ask me in the comments. I'd be happy to reply, right? Then it's another way to build trust and another way to help someone, get past, because the initial coaching is the content. Answering the question is more coaching. Now, this brings up a good question that I've been asked a lot this weekend. So I'm going to ask you, what is coaching to you? What is a good coach?
What is a good coach? A coach is somebody that recognizes that the magic is inside the other person.
Okay.
It helps them get clarity for what is inside them.
I like that answer. Okay. For me, it is someone that inquires, inspires, and holds the other person accountable to take action. And then when they start taking action, you listen, and then you ask really good questions because you want to start poking holes.
Yeah.
Not for the sake of poking holes, trying to get the other person to start 360 moving around that action or that thought that they had.
Yep.
To figure out why am I doing this? Am I getting the result I wanted? What can I change? Nothing to do with this podcast, folks. I just wanted to ask Jason Tracy that question.
The analogy the perfect analogy I've thought of for coaching period is like when you go to the eye doctor. Do you wear contacts glasses?
I do not.
You're good. I'm blind. I have
I ate a lot of carrots or something.
Good for you. I'm blind without my contacts or my glasses. So I've been to the eye doctor since I was in kindergarten, something like that. So I think about it, and there's a name. I had a client that was an ophthalmologist, and she told me the name for the machine that they put in front of your eyes, and they flip the different lenses over, and they say, "Can you see better now, or here?" Here. And the way I look at coaching is putting that machine over your eyes and flipping it. Do you see better now? Do you see better now? Do you see better now? And you're helping them get that clarity and that clearness around what it is they're doing.
That's a great analogy. You could have probably figured it out on your own, but without having the tool and the person to use the tool, you're going to just get the results so much faster. Great analogy. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great question.
Yeah. I'm just back to your podcast now. I just wanted to ask that.
No, I love it. I love when people flip the script on me. People are like, can I ask you questions? Like, absolutely.
Just very curious. I wanted to know.
Man, so tell me about this event that you were just at.
So Brendan Bouchard, most people, I didn't.
Yeah.
Other than I thought he was just an author. Someone passed one of his books along to me. Turns out he's got several books. He's been coaching for 18 years. I don't want to do him a disservice, but he's coached Tom Brady. He's coached Oprah, coaches Fortune 500 companies. But that's where he's at now. Yeah. And he's also a thought leader in the coach space. How does he inspires people to be the best version of themselves? A lot of psychology and, training that he has had that has went into that. The event that we went to was Coaching Summit. It's part of his growth day. I didn't know there was a difference until someone told me their growth day is like his stadium tour that he does with other Tony Robbins like people, where they're coaches, but they're like these leaders in their space, millions of followers, and they're going to inspire and affect change all in one day, and you're going to leave refreshed.
Yeah.
This was more the nuts and the bolts of how to be a better coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
How to use different tools to serve your clients better, then effectively like how to build your business too, because at the end of the day, we still have, mouths to feed and bills to pay, right? And coaching is like our way to do that. So they were 3 12-hour days. I didn't stay for the fourth. 3 12-hour days of different workshops, small group workshops that we would break out into, then get you on your feet and have you do breathing exercises and jump up and down and like just get pumped up. And if it was your first coaching event, you'd be like, this is a cult.
Yep.
If you have been to a coaching event before, you realize they're always like that because they want to get you in the frame of mind that you're energized, excited, and ready to learn.
Yeah.
So I've been to several coaching events through different schools and different businesses. This one resonated with me the most. I'm not sure why yet. Took copious notes, a lot of pictures of slides, a lot of videos. I think it was just the way that I do know what it is. So in some of my older content, and I even talked at Social Circle about this, right? Like the tool that I used for coaching that I learned was every result that you have in your life starts from the thought that you have about a circumstance, which I find to be very true.
Mm-hmm.
There's a circumstance, it's completely neutral, but it's a fact. And then you have a thought about it, and based on what you're thinking or the thought that you have, and sometimes they run on autopilot, right? You get your body creates a feeling. So a thought is in your conscious brain, a feeling is a vibration in your body. You have the feeling, and because you feel a certain way, you do or do not do certain things. Those are your actions, and those actions create the result. So
kind of like a tuning fork, if you think about it.
Yes. Took the words out of my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, it's okay. It's perfect. So that means I'm articulating it really well.
Yep.
So sorry about that. So we go into the thought line, and we coach around the thought line to change the feeling line, the action line, the result line. He teaches coaching and serving your clients from the action line. Go into the action line. What actions are you taking right now? And then he kind of works backwards from the action line to the result. So if you want this result, now we need to change our actions. So then how do we need to feel to take those actions? And then what do we need to think to do that? That resonated with me a lot.
Yeah.
Because I was unconsciously doing that in my own life.
Yeah.
Right. Different ways to get the same result. But for me, it's like we need to go in and tweak what we're doing. And sometimes it needs to be gradual and sometimes it needs to be drastic. That ripping the Band-Aid off thing again.
It's nice when you can go through and like identify specifically what tweaks to make. And sometimes we've like, what I see is like kind of figuring out just tweaking it all. You know what I mean? Like nothing's working. This isn't working. We're not getting results. Let's change everything. Mm-hmm. As opposed to maybe it's not everything. Maybe some of these things are working and it's just a couple things that need tweaking.
It's like running a business. And if you've ever put an ad out there and you're like, man, this was a great ad. Like I believed in this. Or if you did any market testing and like this tested really well, and then you launch it live and you put money into it and it doesn't work. Are you going to tear the whole ad down, or are you going to change the font? Are you going to change the copy, the things you wrote? Are you going to change the image?
Yeah.
Well, burning it all down to the ground is going to probably result in the same thing. So why don't you start like change the image, change the wording that you use, change the color, change, one little thing at a time and test it out. And to your point, that's the great thing about coaching is someone puts that tool over your eyes and shows you different lenses, and you're going to find the thing that you should tweak first, ideally because they've been there before. Yep. And they can help get that result for you.
I just had a client that had a follow-up session this Friday, and we had made adjustments. We were working together in January, and we made some adjustments to her process and the type of client she was looking for, and she instantly had these crazy results and had her book filled up. And
That's
she had
awesome.
It was awesome. It was really awesome. She's a stud. So she was out there rocking it, and it was like all of a sudden she got so busy, like she had to literally stop taking clients and start reserving stuff out for future months.
What a great problem to have.
Great problem to have, right? So she came back the other day because she was like, I got to a point where I found the things that I didn't really like about these types of clients, and I don't want these types of clients again. And she kind of felt like she was back at ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she had the success, but it didn't turn out necessarily all the way that she wanted it. And it's like, great, what didn't work? What did work though? What did you like out of what happened over the 6 months? The money, obviously, you like the money, but what was the ideal situations out of here? Because it's not burn it all to the ground. There was a lot, probably 75% of this worked and 25% of it didn't, which is what shook out, right? 75% of it was great. 25% of it was the stuff that she couldn't deal with. Great. Let's tweak our process now to eliminate this 25%.
Yeah. And how did these clients come to me that I don't want to work with anymore? Right?
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean you don't like them. It's just, it might not be the business that you're in is serving people who are struggling with a certain area, or you didn't feel comfortable like trying to address, you know, their need or their struggle. So what brought them to me? So that can help you like decide, what do I need to change then to get the people I was getting that I did like to work with versus them. Really got into the weeds on coaching here. I apologize about that. I told you I'm fired up from this conference I went to. Just because we all have something to teach. You know, ideally, it's something that you could have used when you were at that point.
That is absolutely it. That's one of the commonalities of all my guests on Coffee and Grit is that everybody on here has had a problem in their life and they've solved it and are now showing others how to do it, right?
Right. That's the going back to, we all had therapists and now we're all getting coaches, right? Because it just speeds up the process for you.
I swear by therapy. Again, you know, I had the abusive dad and all these things going on. My mom, when I was in middle school, got me in therapy and I was allowed to, you know, able to talk it out. I wanted to be a therapist for the longest time. You know,
we have that in common.
I didn't want to go to school though.
No,
I didn't want to go to school for that long. So I was like, nope, not doing that.
That's one of my motivational tools for my son. He's 10. So I can say this kind of thing to him when he doesn't want to sit down and do an hour of like just 2 subjects. And I got to like walk him through those. And he's like, I just want to go and play, or I want to take the dog on a walk, or I want to go ride my bike. I want to go out back and build a fort. I was like, okay. And then we're going to finish this though. And then he gets the tears. I'm like, well, or you can just go back to a school for 8 hours a day. Okay. And then he's back to it. Like that little reminder is like, you have it really good right now.
Exactly. He's like, okay, we're good.
Yeah. My 7-year-old will, you know, daughters, that's a different subject, but she'll call my bluff, or she'll be like, okay, fine. I want to go have more friends. I'm like, you have so many friends right now. Like I can't keep up with all your activities. That's another common struggle.
All of a sudden you have to sell her back into it.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
She's going to be dangerous.
That's one of the biggest, she's going to be very dangerous. I have to dye my beard because I'm almost all gray, and it's because of her. And I'm like, how does my son look like a carbon copy of me and act like my wife? And my daughter looks like a carbon copy of my wife and acts completely like me. You know, But then I got home after 5 days and she's like, my son never got up. He's like, hey, Dad. And she runs up and gives me a hug. And then she's like, I missed you. I'm so glad you're home. And I'm like, are you sure you're glad I'm home? Because you and I like to battle.
She's like, I missed that so much.
Yeah. Man.
That is awesome. It's awesome how it's funny when they're like us. Much it's like.
Yeah. And they get the best qualities, they get the worst qualities. And if you're paying attention, it's like, man, we really got to curb that, or they're going to like grow up to have the flaws that I have too. Not just the strengths, but the flaws too, right?
Yeah.
How do I teach that? How do I teach them to not do that? Again, to that conversation of having more engaged fathers.
And it's like learning and growing too, and being vulnerable and being like, I made a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing about being a man, right? It's so hard for us to apologize.
Yeah.
Right. Because it is a point of pride, because we want to have the answers. We want to be right. We want to be competent and know what we're doing. And I think some of the biggest moments of my personal growth as a spouse, as a father, I've had it before in coaching, is, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
Yeah. And
this is why. So we're going to do this differently.
It's huge in leadership and parenthood. Like when you can say, I was wrong. It's you. I had a leader who's he changed my life. He was a big mentor, but I remember one time he told me like, never admit that you were wrong. And I like thought about that for the longest time. And I'm like, why? I feel like I'd earn so much more respect if I was just like, you know what? I was wrong on that,
Mm-hmm.
and when I did it, it was like I'd get instant respect out of it.
That's interesting too, because if you can't ever be wrong, like if you're not admitting that you're wrong, you're essentially saying you are not wrong, right?
Yeah.
So if you're never wrong, how are you learning?
You're not. And that's a big thing I learned from him.
Yeah.
You can learn good, bad, and indifferent. And to your point,
Right.
you know, we're not teaching our kids the bad habits too. They're watching, but if they can see that you've changed habits as you've gone. I had this guy that I coached I'd say coached. I was a sales leader at the time, and he was on my team, and I was younger, and we got into this argument, and I literally said, "Do you want to go outside?" You know, like literally it was like, he pushed me to this point, and I was, you know, had this immaturity, and I was like, "You want to go outside?" So we'd worked together for years, and like years later, he had said, "Remember that time when you?" I'm like, "I hope you can see that I was totally wrong in that. It was in my maturity level, and I hope that you can see over these several years that would be nothing in my character that I would do now." You know, that's like, I've changed and grown so much, and he had to admit it, but he was trying to hold it over my head. And I was like, "Listen, you know, I was wrong. This is what happened, but I hope you see that I've changed and grown."
And back to embracing vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, very early on in the podcast, like that was my story, is just being vulnerable. Like, these are my mistakes. These are my flaws. You did the same thing with this guy. Did you have a relationship with him after that?
Oh, absolutely. We're still to this day have a relationship.
Oh, still to this day?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah. In fact, he's been living in Florida for the past 7 years, and he's now moving back down the street, and I'm super excited.
Good for you.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's certain people in life, when you get around them, you just get better, you know, and honestly, at that point in time, he needed me to kick his ass because he didn't have parents that kicked his ass. And, you know, he had a lot of talent, but there was no structure, no discipline, and nobody ever held him accountable. And I did that. And, you know, when you say that, that was the biggest learning lesson for me in my leadership, because it took a lot of when in leadership, it takes a lot to like stand up and have that fortitude and be like, "I'm going to hold you accountable." Right. And I like this guy. Right. And so it could have been easy to have that. We talked about beforehand. I don't think this is before recording, sympathy and empathy. And there's a big difference. And you had said something to the fact of like, when you start feeling bad for people, your leadership line, you know, it breaks down. You can't effectively lead somebody.
If you jump in the pool with them,
you jump in the pool with them, right?
With sympathy.
Yep.
Right. Then you're participating.
Right.
Then you can't be an effective leader. But if you can have empathy because you relate, because you've been there, now you have the opportunity to be the person for them that would have helped you too. Now you can help them.
So my sympathy, I would have been like, "Matt, man, I feel so bad for you. Your parents are like, we're shit. Like, you've come out of this place. Like, you know what? I'm not going to suspend you today. I know you need to make the money. Just, I hope, you know, learn from this lesson." That guy's going to keep on running over. He's going to keep doing it. Empathy was like, "Man, I totally get where you're coming from. I've been from a similar place.
Right.
But if it doesn't change now, it's never going to change. And do you want to be this person for the rest of your life?"
Did you ever get a chance to ask him what lesson he learned from you wanting to take him out to the parking lot?
No, I never did. That's a good question.
Will you ask him for that when he moves
I will.
down the street? I'm dying to know the answer to that question. So he can learn from sympathy, learn from empathy. But what did he learn from the direct threat of violence? Because there's something there.
There's something there.
Right? And now there's been long enough period in between where you can actually like peel back that onion a little bit, have some laughs. Yeah, man. I had a similar instance happen to me when I was 19. Yeah, that's a different story for a different time, but I got into a fight with someone I was leader over.
Yeah.
Yeah, physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't talk about it today. That's an interesting story.
Yeah. It was a high stress work environment, and he said something to me. I said something to him. He spit at me, and it was like, game on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't talk to him anymore. I wish him well. He was a big hippie too, so I often wonder. I have wondered. I'm like, what happened to him? Like that this guy was like, he went off the rails. But it was a high stress environment. Interesting stories.
So you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And Matt was one of the first guys that I realized this is the type of guy I wanted to coach. You know, and even after the fact, I started my coaching business. And I went out and I thought I could coach everybody. One, wrong. Two, like you start getting these people that they want results. They read all the books. They know all the things, but they don't actually want to take the action because the action scares the crap out of them. And I can lead them to the water, but if I made them drink, I'd actually have to hold their head under the water, and then they would die because then I'd have a carcass around because I drowned them. Right? Like I can't make somebody else go do the thing. But it was like realizing the people that I had coached through my professional life, the people that I had the results with, responded to the shit that I said to them. They responded like I could get into their mind and like twist those things, and they would go and do it. figure out what was their biggest motivator, what was their biggest driver, and what was the biggest hurdle that stood in their way. How can I help them get that? How can I help them get over that hurdle? And then it was like, boom.
Well, because you built that trust with them.
Yeah.
And that's why they came to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was my, I guess that's a superpower though, as far as like building that trust, because we go over and do takeovers of different stores. And, here's a good example. I had this particular leader that I inherited from a company that we had bought. Like we bought his 2 locations and we'd inherited his people, and he's giving me a rundown of all the people. And he's like, you're going to hate Hannah. Hannah's a me only person. He was like, if I ask her if she can take the deposit back to the bank, she asked me how much I could show she's going to pay. I'm going to pay her for it. Like, you're going to dislike her. I sit down with her and I'm asking her questions about who she is. I find out she was raised by a single mom. Her single mom, the most amount of money she's made in her life in a single year was $15 or $20,000. Like, so she grew up in poverty. Her dad's a piece of shit. Yet somehow she's found a way in her young life to be a survivor, right? And I'm just hearing...
That's part of her survival mechanism.
I'm hearing her story and the pride that she has, that she's been able to raise herself since she was 15 and figure out a way, working in the restaurants, becoming a salesperson. And she's had success being a salesperson. This guy just doesn't like her, right? And so I'm seeing these things. I'm like, this is my person. She has a story similar to me. Yeah. Like, I got the key now, right? Like, I know how to motivate her. Like, and still to this day, I went to her wedding last year. She ended up becoming my first 2 location manager. She was one of my top salespeople. We're close to this day. I had actually hired her for one of my clients at one point when I started a couple of years in my business. Just those relationships that you build. But I could see that magic. I could see that what she prided herself in, and all she needed to do was have somebody invest in her.
I was going to say, or ask, is it safe to say that this other gentleman never asked her the questions that you were asking to figure out? I mean,
oh, absolutely. It's very safe to say.
To figure out why is she this way, and you just had.
It's inward versus outward mindset. Most people operate on what can you give? What can you do for me? Especially business owners. They're like, why are you not selling for me? Why can you not show up in time for me? Why are you not hitting my numbers? Why? But like, nobody asks, like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Really?
We're all here.
No, really. Why are you here?
We're all here because we're trying to survive.
Yeah.
If you can get away from that and say, like, that's scary, it's coachy. So if people don't know the term, like the scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this woman was this way, therefore she just must be a lost cause. I can't get anything out of her. I can't work with her. You took the time, that abundance mindset, that growth mindset, that like, why is she this way? Now I understand her.
Nobody wants to show up at their job every day and suck. No. Nobody wants to work in an environment where they feel unwanted or unvaluable. Right. And so if you can just unlock that, one, either this is a bad fit and you need another job. And so that's how I got good at firing, is because I just realized that I'm holding somebody hostage that doesn't belong here. And whenever I release those people, I'd always get messages back like, thank you so much for doing that. I was never going to quit.
It was a turning point for them in a way.
It was a turning point for them. I've had people go and start their own businesses, go find the job that was meant for them. Or it was the shake up to realize I'm not doing the shit that I need to do. And then I'd have people be like, that stuff that you used to tell me to do, oh my God, I started doing it. I got promoted. Oh my God, my boss is like, who are you? Like, I'm seeing these people that are thriving in different companies that were not for me. It was a wake up call for them.
Yeah. That is interesting. I mean, it's said all the time. Like, the most difficult times you've been through were exactly what you needed, but you didn't know it until you came through it.
Absolutely.
Right. You said it and it made me think of a time that I got fired. And just like how heartbroken I was, and like I was really invested. And I thought I was doing a great job. And they're like, you were doing a terrible job because you weren't invested. Yeah. And I thought I was. But then looking back, I was like, I was mailing it in. Right. I wasn't being the coworker I needed to be. There was a lot to it, but
a lot of times that's not your fault either. Did anybody ever communicate that to you that you weren't doing the right thing?
As a matter of fact, I had just gotten Employee of the Month. The year before.
How do you get Employee of the Month and they're telling you your attitude shit?
It was tricky. I didn't wear a safety vest when I was supposed to wear a safety vest.
Okay.
And so it was just like, you're done. You're mailing it in.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? So maybe I got Employee of the Month looking back because I had like 1 or 2 good months leading up to it. But as a whole, my year sucked.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. So many problems occur though is because people don't even know they had a problem. And because people are afraid to tell them. hey, you're not doing shit right. And then they avoid that conversation. And then, like, it's not even like, hey, you're doing shit wrong, but like figuring out what's going wrong. I'd have so many leaders that would come up to me and be like, man, Cory is so great. Like Cory shows up late, or he's mailing it in, and I just see so much potential in him. If he just took it seriously, he would light this shit on fire. Have you said that to him? No.
Have you asked him what motivates him?
Have you asked him
why
that?
is he here?
Right. And they'd be like, no. Go have that conversation and then come back to me and see what happens.
Right.
And it was like all the time. It was like, wow, they didn't even realize that they were mailing it in. They didn't even realize. And actually, a couple this thing and this thing is going on. We figured out an alternate route and they're in.
And sometimes people just need to take it. Sometimes people need someone to take an interest in them, even in a place of employment. That's like you did with this, was her name Hannah?
Yeah.
That it was a genuine curiosity.
Yep.
Right. That goes beyond just the operations of the day to day. And now you
have people that believe in us.
And you get that key. Yeah.
Who was the person that believed in you?
My wife. That's lame because everyone says it, but no, it really was because she knew my background.
Yep.
And when we met, I was working for her and we became friends. And then we started dating, and she didn't care. Like the way that I felt about myself, like she's always said, like, I saw the potential in you that you're starting to figure out. And that person you were is not the person you're going to be unless you choose to be that. And now I get an opportunity to teach my kids that, which is very funny because I told my kids about my past for the first time last Tuesday.
Wow.
They didn't know. We were going to wait until they were adults. And it just came up twice, like very organically, about people getting in trouble and making bad decisions. And my son looked at my daughter. I don't think it resonated with her completely. Like she was kind of like, okay. And then went on to play with the dog. But my son, like his jaw hit the table. And then he had a lot of questions. And he's like, I can't, wow. And you figured it out. Like you survived that. And like, cause he's seen shows and like all of that. And I think we bonded a little bit more because of it. And then he just moved on. I'm waiting for him to come back around and ask me questions one day. But yeah, it was like very like it was weird when I was at Social Circle in June teaching and told that story.
Yeah.
And then I did it on my podcast the week after. So it's just all out there. Right. And it was way different to tell my son. But now I have this opportunity to use that because he's 10 for the next 8+ years about making good decisions, not taking shortcuts. When things feel easy and you can see a chance to capitalize on something being easy, it's not the way to go.
I love this so much. This whole show is spending so much time telling people to share their vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Because we run from them so much because we think it's going to push people away. And it does the opposite every single time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. If it's not the right people,
being vulnerable definitely attracts the people that are right for you.
Yes.
And
your wife.
My wife. Yeah. And we said that earlier, like, I don't like everyone. So why would I expect everyone to like me? Right.
Right.
And I mean,
I've seen The Village. I don't want to.
Yes. That is beautiful. I've seen The Village. And someone would probably say that about me. Like, he's part of the village and I want nothing to do with it. And that's okay.
Fair. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yep. We're not going to please everybody. We're not everybody's cup of tea. And that's good. Again, it's that I say riches in the niches. We talked about that in the entrepreneur.
We did talk about that. Yeah.
When you have that specific, these are my people. Mm-hmm. Great. Because like, why would you want to go hang out with other people that make you miserable?
Yeah.
That judge you. Why would you want to put yourself in that situation? Like, you know what? If there are these people that don't want to be around me, great. Like the people that get attracted to me and want to be around me, like, man, if you can build your life with those people, like you're going to have a successful, happy life just for that.
Absolutely. And that's what led me to leave the confidence. Like I'm still coaching on confidence. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's more tactical now because I'm going to guide them through like, here's how you get started in homeschooling and everything that we talked about. But when you said the riches in the niches, and for those who aren't coaches, they've probably never heard that, but it's true. There's no men that are homeschool coaches. And I didn't know that.
I didn't know
until, not that I know of. So don't hold me to that, but I've looked. Yeah. There's a ton of women doing it. And I saw like a targeted Instagram post in late July when I was like making this shift. So this is like serendipity right here. I was going to dive in headfirst on like a different niche this year. and pivot. But how am I going to do this and my podcast and my vlog while I'm homeschooling? I passionately want to be available to my kids. So I'm not going to send them to a private school, a public school. I'm just not going to do it right now. When they're in their elementary years, this is the fit for my family.
Yeah.
How do I do it? How I do it? There was an Instagram ad for these posters that said, they had all these different sayings on them that Marcus Aurelius said, what stands in the way is the way. I'm not shitting. Like, it was so weird. And
It's like the lights came on.
I had been having these conversations with my buddy, Aaron, who's now my coach, because I'm like, you've done this before. You've pivoted. You've built a bigger business than you've done. Like, I need some help with my messaging and my background and my story from the past. That thing comes up not 3 days, 4 days after the conversation. I'm already like making the decision about homeschooling again this year. And then I'm like, I've worked on confidence. I'm going to go teach people how to homeschool their kids, elementary age kids specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so weird. I think if you are open, we all get signs like that. We all get messages. The Muse is speaking to us all the time. Whatever you want to, like, the Lord, if you're spiritual, like, you're always getting messages, and if you're looking for them, right?
Yep.
And that was the weird shift.
That's a great quote to pop up right there.
It was weird. It was a metal poster. I wanted to buy it, but it was like $399 for a metal poster that's like 2 feet by 3 feet, and I didn't do it. I might, maybe I'll put that as my carrot, as one of my success markers one day.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's just on a piece of metal?
Yeah, they etch it into metal. It's a metal poster.
Okay.
But Marcus Aurelius has, what's that book that it was not the musings of Marcus Aurelius, but he lived 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And all of his sayings and his thoughts and his ideas are still relevant. It's like bananas. And I had heard that in high school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I had forgotten. And it was just there. I think that is true for anyone who is in business or trying to grow personally or get healthy, make financial changes in their life, start a podcast, whatever it may be. What stands in the way is your way. So how do you make your circumstances work for you right now? Because that's all you got.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
If you want big changes, what'd you say earlier? You got to start with these small tweaks.
Small tweaks. It's small tweaks. I posted a picture the other day of like, it was just it's funny. Like, I looked at pictures back from like just June of me. And then I took pictures the other day, and it was like the differences were insane. It was like, wow, the differences in this, 60-day period are crazy. And it's just showing up and being consistent. And it's like, what, 0.001% growth every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's that microscopic like action, like they compound. It's like putting pages in a book, right?
Yeah.
You put one page in between two hardcovers, it doesn't look like a book, but every day you put a page in there.
You do homeschooling for 4 years. You have 4 years of experience that nobody else has.
Right. And I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I do know I'm really good at figuring things out. And be the learner that you want your kids to be. Be the learner you want your employees to be. Be the learner you want your spouse to be.
Yep. That's killer. Man, Cory, this has been a phenomenal episode.
It's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on down.
I'm glad we did it.
Absolutely. Me too.